Sonic Colors. Yeah, this game sucks. So I decided I wanted to just talk about this game again because with the upcoming remaster of the game, the community's really been talking about this game a lot again. And of course, all the Sonic YouTubers also milking colors for content, so I decided it's my turn as well. And obviously, as you can tell, I don't like this game at all, and I think it's pretty shit, to be honest. And the actual reason why I've decided to randomly shit on Sonic Colors for a video is because for a few years now, actually, I think ever since Forces, around that time, online there'd be posts of people just saying, oh, why does everyone randomly hate Colors again? Or even, as ridiculous as this sounds, I've actually heard some say that Colors was universally loved by the critics and the fans, which that's just an outright lie, and it's nothing but revisionist history. Yes, the critics and the game journalists, whatever you want to call them, they did give Colors pretty good review scores, obviously better than what most Sonic games at the time were getting. Prior to that, we had Unleashed, had pretty bad review scores, and of course Secret Rings in 06. And maybe for the general audience had a bit of a warm reception towards it. But for Sonic fans, no, this definitely was not the case. And it was definitely divisive at launch. Some fans freaked out about the voice cast change alone. So to say that this was universally loved is actually kind of ridiculous. And of course, we got the larger issues such as the dramatic shift in writing and story tone and the gameplay itself. And guess what? At the time, I was one of the people in this group who did not like Colors and its direction at all. And I remember there being many others who agreed with me and had the same sentiment. It's very easy to cherry pick certain posts on message boards or old YouTube comments to make it seem like everyone loved this. But guess what? I can easily do the same and make it seem like everyone fucking hated this game. It's very easy to push a narrative using only one side of the story or only showing the thoughts of the people in your immediate social circles. Very shocking stuff, I know. My point being, no, this quote hatred of Colors isn't very random at all. It's always been here. Of course, there's always going to be people who dislike a game no matter how great it is. Colors definitely had a lot of people on both sides. It was very split. And honestly, from my perspective, I see more people complain about others hating on Colors than people who actively hate Sonic Colors to this day. And any criticisms of the game are only going to be magnified in present day after the failure of something like Sonic Forces, which is a product of the direction that Colors decided to take the series in. So anyways, with all of this out of the way, let me just go into why I think this game is so bad and why I dislike it. Like I said, I've had a lot of criticisms of this game since it came out, and of course, being a Sonic fan, I did beat the game. I played it all when it first came out, and while I have played it since launch, I will admit that I have not played it very much so I did decide to go back and, really try to get a feel for the game. It has been a while, and obviously try to disregard my previous thoughts as much as possible while playing it. Just giving it a fair shake while being a little open-minded about it. So first I'll go over the obvious stuff. The story is basically non-existent. The stuff everybody's already heard already. The corny jokes, Baldy McNose hair, blah blah blah, all that stuff. You probably get it by now. This aspect has probably been beaten to death already.
Baldy nose hair!
Especially post Sonic Forces. Of course, this game introduced a new voice cast. I remember at the time I hated it pretty much. I didn't like it at all. Of course, after 10 years, Roger's time as Sonic is over, and over time I pretty much got used to all these voices. I know they changed Tails for Sonic Boom and onwards, but overall, looking back at this today, I really don't have much to say. It was Roger's first time as Sonic, and I do think he's improved since then. And I don't really hate this anymore or anything because, you know, time passes and all of that. And after getting used to this voice, all that, Mike Pollock was fine as Eggman in this game. And for Sonic and Tails, it's just kind of there. I don't really have much thoughts on it anymore after getting used to it. Like I said, not much to say. You get my point. So I'll go over the graphics now. And I think this is a good time to do so because everything else after this, when I start talking about the gameplay and all that, it's probably going to be all negative. Obviously, for a Wii game, I think the graphics on this game are pretty solid. I don't think it's amazing by any means, but with the Wii not being the most powerful console, I think they did a pretty good job on that aspect. The level themes, some of them are pretty cool, I have to admit. But then there's the ones that I really don't like Sweet Mountain. It's just like a generic Candyland type of level. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that aspect. Now, time to discuss the most important part, obviously, the gameplay itself. Let me just say, Sonic Colors probably has one of the most lacking gameplay experiences in any Sonic game. So let's take a look back at Sonic Unleashed, which was the previous major title. Of course, we had Black Knight in between, but that was kind of a side thing that used motion controls. And Sonic Unleashed was the game that introduced the boost gameplay that Colors uses as well. And while I am very open about my thoughts on the boost formula overall, I just don't like it that much, and I really don't think it's the type of gameplay Sonic should be going with. I can see the appeal. Looking at a game like Unleashed, it uses the boost formula, and that kind of turns the gameplay style into something that's more reaction based. You have to have quick reaction time and all that. And I can understand why that's appealing and why that's enjoyable. And while Sonic Unleashed was a bit divisive at launch as well, the big takeaway from that game, at least from the people that enjoyed the boost formula, was that they should try to make a Sonic game with only the Unleashed Day levels and no Werehog or extra padding or anything like that. And while yes, Colors does retain the boost from the game, it certainly does not have that quick reaction time based gameplay that made Unleashed so appealing to many people. Or at least the daytime stages of Unleashed, I should say. The levels are very linear, but unlike others, I won't rip on it for that, as I really think that the boost gameplay style does kind of need those linear levels to work, but there's just nothing there. It kind of really is no exaggeration at all, just pressing X and going forward. I know that's a very cliche thing to say, but that's really what I felt while replaying this game. And on top of that, while all the levels are only the core Sonic boost gameplay, also we do have the return of the 2D sections, but in this game I really do think they're very lacking. Mostly you just jump from platform to platform and that's about it. I'm not gonna be the guy to say just because it's 2D it's bad. It's just not fun at all. Probably some of the worst 2D sections in any Sonic game. But what makes this issue with the 2D sections even worse is that the majority of the game, and I mean the vast majority, it's most of the game is in 2D, and you have very little actual 3D Sonic sections. Each world has 6 levels, and only like 1 or 2 of the levels are actually worth playing, and like 4 or 5 of them are just very lazily made, mostly 2D, boring levels that are just very obvious padding. And even with all the padding, the game itself is only about 3 to 5 hours long at most. And I'm not pointing this out to say 2D bad and that just because it's 2D it completely ruins everything. The 2D in this game for the most part is very boring, generic, blocky platforming stuff. And yes, platforming has always been a part of Sonic. I don't believe that Sonic is just about going fast. Of course, you look at the classic 2D games on the Genesis, there's a lot of levels that do have these slower paced platforming sections, and I think the one that most people are quick to bring up is Marble Zone. And while yes, that is a slower paced level than something like Green Hill or Starlight, the key difference between the 2D and colors and the slower paced levels of the classic games is that in the classics, these levels are designed in a way, while yes, they're a bit slower paced, but if you're actually good at the game, you know the level well, you know what you're doing, you can actually get past these slower sections where normally you'd have to maybe wait a bit or jump slower fairly quickly. In colors, on the other hand, the levels aren't built like this at all, and they're pretty much straightforward and the same thing the whole way. And with the boost being more focused on a reaction than being a momentum-based platformer, colors overall in both 2D and 3D actually has barely any moments where you actually have to have quick reactions and all of that. And when there is, it's usually piss easy, even in the later levels such as Planet Wisp. Basically, what made the boost appealing to some people completely missing in this game, which is why this game lacks so much substance even compared to other games in this formula, and not to mention the shit ton of automation in this game. And I'm sure you've all seen Starlight Carnival, but there's way more than just that level. There's so many sections where the game just starts playing on its own or auto running, stuff like that. You know, the quick step sections also fall into this. There's even sections where the game doesn't let you boost if you wanted to because it forces you to drift instead. There's a lot of times like that where it's not necessarily an automated section, but you don't really feel like you're in full control of your character. Now, continuing with the gameplay, let's go over the main gimmick of this game, the Wisps, which give you the color powers. Now, I'm not gonna go over each one in detail because I pretty much have the same opinion for most of these. There's some of them that are just complete shit, like the Cube and the Frenzy, that are just very forced and either should have been completely reworked or not in the game at all, replaced with something more interesting. Also, we have the Cyan Wisp, which is just a stand-in for the Lightspeed Dash or the Ancient Light. Honestly, they just should have had the Lightspeed Dash in this game, and even with that, this one would have been kind of useless, and it already is mostly just spectacle. There are some Wisps that are actually somewhat good that I kind of like. For example, the Drill. It's pretty cool to just drill underground and find secret areas and pathways, but I do feel like this one they could have done a bit more with, and maybe incorporate it into the actual platforming and not just to find secret areas. Also, Spike is another really good one. That one lets you climb up walls and all of that. It is pretty cool. And the Wisps are even utilized for the boosting in this game. Instead of rings to get boost, you use the White Wisp. And honestly, this is probably the worst one. It does feel very forced. They should have just kept the rings as the main power source. And the White Wisps are actually pretty far apart from each other, so you do actually find yourself running out of boost every once in a while, unlike the other boost games. So that also makes the levels a bit slower. I really can't tell if this was intentional or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was intentional. So yeah, that covers it for the gameplay pretty much. Going into the extra stuff, you now have red rings you collect inside the levels, kind of like the Sun and Moon medals from Unleashed, but you don't use these to unlock levels or anything. You also have the Game Land, which are extra levels that can also be played in multiplayer, but completing them all and collecting all the red star rings does give you Supersonic. And with Supersonic not being a part of the story or anything, or even the Chaos Emeralds, I guess this is a pretty cool unlock. Although I do think Supersonic should have been a part of the main game as a final boss, and this is actually something the 3DS version did. But since it didn't have any story relevance in this version, I'm fine with it just being a cool collectible you unlock. Like I've said already, overall I think this game is actually pretty bad, and it's always been like that too. It's not some random change of opinion. The game is just very lacking in terms of both story and especially in gameplay. The only thing I can kind of give it credit for is obviously the graphics, and the music is also alright, but everything else, what makes a game good just isn't, which obviously that being the gameplay. And just because your favorite YouTuber, man, says that at one point everyone loved colors universally doesn't make it true. There are always people who didn't like this game, and my thoughts back then pretty much the same now after replaying it, and I'm sure this goes for many other people as well. And ironically enough, the major criticisms of this game are very similar to the criticisms of Sonic Forces, and that's not to say that they're the same level of bad. It's not what I'm saying. It's just something to think about, and it totally makes sense why people would look at Forces and then go look back at this game and show their criticisms for this too. Saying that nobody hated this before is basically just lying to yourself at this point. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up this video. In conclusion, this game is pretty shit. I've always said this about colors, but replaying it today really reaffirms my stance on that. And that's all I have to say for this video. Make sure to like and sub if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time.